For me, it's about changing the culture in my family to really value education, to love learning, to love reading, and to just be so engaged in lifelong learning that can help us to be better at serving our people, serving our own community, and discovering the potential that I have to overcome really hard challenges that I never thought I could do.
There is a system that works for us. We just have to take advantage of that system. We are not alone. We have support from counselors, from advisors, from other women that are willing to help, other women that have gone through it themselves, raising kids. I know that we just have to tell ourselves that we can do it.
Good evening. Good to have you with us tonight. I'm Susan Madsen. I'm a professor here in the Woodbury School of Business at Utah Valley University, and I also founded and started the Utah Women in Leadership Project, and our mission is to help strengthen the impact of Utah girls and women in various ways so they can find their voices and confidence and really want to be leaders and step out and make a difference, whether that's in their homes or their churches or the community or any setting. So that's what we do. Therefore, you'll notice, and those of you that have been at, many of you have probably been at other events, we use the word impact a lot because strengthening the impact is our mission. And I love the work that we do. Tonight, we have an event called Impact Evening for Utah Girls and Women with 3 workshops, and I'll have more information about those, and you know that already because you signed up for them in just a minute. But I do want to thank our volunteers that have been here. I have staff. I don't know if they're in the room, but Deirdre, Robin, raise your hand if you're in here. Robin's over here. Amber, I think, is in the other room, and Ashley's probably out there, so thank you. And if you are one of our ambassadors, and you are here, which I know we have a few, can you stand, please? Heather's here, Janice is here. Is that Belinda? I can barely see you. A few people. Oh, and Tiffany over here, thank you for coming. And before we get started, I do want to thank our sponsors. Belinda stood up back there. She is the director of the Center for the Advancement of Leadership here at Utah Valley, which is a sponsor. doTERRA, anybody from a doTERRA here? We have an overflow room that's probably full as well, so everybody's not in this room. The Steve and Betty Gibson family, the Women's Success Center here at UVU, the Woodbury School of Business, the Utah Education Network, Squire, Janice is here from Squire. You probably have a few other people here. And the Business Resource Center here at UVU. Let's give them a hand for their sponsorship tonight. And just a quick reminder that we are very active with social media, and we would love to have you like, follow, whatever else is the terms that we need to use in terms of our social media. And then I want to give you a little teaser, and we have brochures or flyers in the rooms, if you want to take some of those, about our next event. We have 4 each year. And so this next event that we will be having, it's on March 7th. Evening, and it's called Strengthening Your Impact in the Community, Conversations That Matter. These are actually pretty serious conversations, and we're really excited about having these. The first one is really for junior high, high school, and college students on actually finding opportunities as young women to serve in the community. We have fabulous multiple people presenting in each room. Another one on poverty and homelessness in Utah, and what can I do about it? A third on sexual assault in Utah, shining a light on a serious issue. A fourth on promoting literacy in your home and community. We all have a part to play there. And then the last one is essential tools for preventing suicide and helping save a life. So these are not light topics, but they're critical topics today. And we wanted to give you an opportunity, all of you, to be able to find out more information about those. So that is that announcement. And then I would like to introduce our keynote speaker for the evening. And after she's done, I'll introduce you quickly to where your workshops will be, and then we'll move into those. So Justice Christine Durham has been on the Utah Supreme Court since 1982 and served as Chief Justice and Chair of the Utah Judicial Council from 2002 to 2012. That's a big deal here in Utah. She previously served on the state trial court for many years and then private practice before that. She received a degree from Wesley College and a JD from Duke University. She is past president of the Conference of Chief Justices of the United States and also past chair of the American Bar Association's Council on Legal Education and Admissions to the Bar, the entity that accredits the American law schools. She's been involved with the Council of American Law Institute, the Board of Overseers for the Rand Corporation's Institute for Civil Justice, and is a fellow of the American Bar Foundation. I just took a few things. So those are just a few things. I didn't want to take most of her time introducing her, so I won't go into all those, but I would encourage you to read her bio. She has many other professional service roles and has been active in judicial education and was the founder of the Leadership Institute in Judicial Education. And actually here in Utah, she created the Utah Coalition for Civic Character and Service Education and has served on the Utah Commission for Civic Education. So she has many honorary degrees, five from different Utah institutions, and has received many wonderful awards as well. So welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate the invitation to be part of this fabulous event, and congratulations to all of you for showing up. and participating. It makes a difference. I've been asked to say a few words about leadership. I was just briefly listening to the introduction when education was mentioned. This is a prime example of the ways in which leadership opportunities come along. One of the stories about me is that when I first became a trial judge, I was a relatively young lawyer. I went on the bench fairly young, and although I had experience trying cases in the courtroom and opportunities, to practice law and do what lawyers do, they handed me a borrowed black robe and a case file, assigned me a courtroom and a court clerk, and said, "Go be a judge." Literally. And, I muddled my way through. I eventually learned how to do my job. But I left that experience thinking, this is a heck of a way to run a railroad. And that's what launched my interest in professional education for members of the judiciary, both on the judicial side and on the staff side. And that led me to find multiple opportunities down the road to get active in organizing professional education for judges so that they could improve their skills, keep up with the law, learn about things like gender bias in the courtroom. So that's just one example of something I want to talk about tonight, having to do with leadership. Leadership has so many components. There's a whole program here at UVU which talks about the development of leadership and what it is. To me, it has at least two very significant components. The first is care, and the other is challenge. In order to be an effective leader, you've got to care about the people and the institutions that you are engaged with. You have to consider yourself in some way responsible for helping other people to do what they do better. And you also have to be willing to challenge them to do it better. And neither of those phenomena, neither the caring nor the challenging, requires you to have a fancy title, a big deal job, people bowing and scraping when you come in the room. It simply means that you have to be aware of opportunities to care for other people in a way that helps them live better lives and to challenge them to do that. So I wanted to mention tonight, my time is a little short, so I wanted to keep it as short and sweet as I could. I want to share with you 4 things that I've learned about leadership in a very long career. I graduated from law school, I was counting up while you were introducing me, for nearly 47 years ago. That's really a long time. And by the way, when I graduated, out of every 100 lawyers in the United States, do you want to guess how many of them were female in 1971? 2. So, so with respect, I assume that's applause for surviving. Thank you, I'll take that. So what that means is that, particularly with respect to women's participation in the profession and what women could bring to the law in every dimension, has been part and parcel of what I've been engaged in for nearly half a century. And it has been a great privilege. It's wonderful to see the progress that we've made, the changes in the law that have occurred, the changes in the profession, the changes in the courts. That doesn't mean there aren't multiple opportunities in my profession and in every other endeavor in the community, in education, in business, in government, for work. There's lots of work. So I wanted to share 4 things that I have learned. The first is, and I think this is unfortunately particularly a message for women and for young women, never underestimate yourself. Never sell yourself short. Let me just quote one of my favorite heroines, Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." Has anybody made you feel inferior in the last 24 hours? week, month. I mean, I recall as a young woman how insecure and uncertain I was about my abilities, about my talents. And sometimes you get encouragement and sometimes you don't. And when you don't particularly, it can be very difficult not to underestimate yourselves. One of the things we know from the social science research about women is that they tend to be more diffident about their abilities than men do. Don't ask me why, but it took me a long time to figure out that, you know, for example, I've worked in judicial appointments all these years. You would be astonished at some of the young male lawyers who think they're ready to be judges. And you would likewise be astonished at some of the young female lawyers who don't think they're ready to be judges, even though the objective relationship between the two might tell quite another story. So along with Eleanor Roosevelt, don't ever give anybody permission to make you feel inferior. Number two, it's very important, and just showing up for this event and participating in these workshops is an essential part of leadership, and that is looking for company, looking for connections and for support, particularly from other girls and women. I would never have been able to accomplish the things that I've been able to do in my career without locating other like-minded women, and over a lifetime they've become my dearest friends. One of the things I'm most thrilled about is the chance, after moving to Utah in the mid-70s, I like to tell a story. I attended a conference up at the University of Utah College of Law, and I met a lawyer from Utah. We were just barely here, and she invited me to a cocktail party after the conference, and I went to the home of a more senior woman lawyer, someone who'd gone to law school in the 50s, and there were 12 women lawyers there, and I'd just come from a couple of years in North Carolina where women lawyers were very scarce on the ground. I thought, my goodness, a dozen women lawyers. Utah's fantastic. This is going to be wonderful. I found out later that was it. That was it. But the connections we made and the friendships we made ultimately led us to create an organization called the Women Lawyers of Utah, which to this day is still fighting for gender fairness issues and providing leadership in the community on all kinds, particularly of diversity and inclusion initiatives. So making friends, reaching out, find people who think the way you do, maybe people who don't think the way you do, but who care about the same issues. So that's very important. Look around and keep trying. Number 3 on my list is, my alarm just went off. We'll see if it lets me know when my time's up. Number 3 is just do it. You know, it's easy to look at issues like the ones that are on the March agenda, poverty and homelessness. What on earth can I, as a single individual, as a young woman, as a more mature woman, what can I do about homelessness and poverty? And then you look at someone like Pamela Atkinson. Anybody ever heard of Pamela Atkinson? Yeah, Pamela came from a very, I actually take some credit for Pamela Atkinson because I wrote a decision in the early 80s that told Intermountain Healthcare that they weren't entitled to tax exemptions for being charitable if they didn't actually provide some gift to the community. It was actually a tax case. But after they lost that case, they hired Pamela Atkinson. And Pamela came to this community, brought skills that she had, not necessarily with homelessness or poverty, but she learned what she needed to know. She befriended the people she needed to befriend, and she became not only a powerhouse in her own right, but a symbol of what a single individual could generate by way of inspiration and support, and she does so to this day. So one person can make a huge difference. Now, Pamela had a title that helped, and she had an institution behind her that helped, but she had already developed the skills that made them think she could do it. So look around for what needs doing. If you are experiencing something that you read about in the paper, that you experience in your own life, that friends are talking about, think about ways that you might find to offer care and support and to offer challenge to other people that would improve that problem. The last thing I want to mention, so never underestimate yourself, look for company, just do it, find the first step and take it, is the issue. I mentioned that leadership is often about change. Now, when you are asking people to change, doesn't matter who they are, doesn't matter where they work or what they do in their lives, when you're asking most people to change, well, how do you feel about it? How do you feel about it when you encounter someone or something that suggests to you that you got to make some big changes in your life? Are you happy about it? As human beings, most of us are not happy about it. We're happy with status quo. We like comfort. Being comfortable in our lives is where most of us would prefer to stay. But if we stay there, and if the people around us stay there, nothing ever gets better. Nothing ever progresses. But when you, as a potential leader, or just a person exercising leadership, when you ask people to change, you have to be aware that there's going to be discomfort, there's going to be pushback. And that's where this element of care becomes so important. You really have to care about the people that you want to make changes. If you just want to run over them, mow them down, and believe me, I've been there. There have been stages in my life when I just wanted to mow them down and say, you're wrong, I'm right. This is how the world should be, and just do it. I didn't have a lot of success with that approach, generally speaking. So what I want to say finally about leadership is that it is about change, that it does require care, but good leadership is often exactly the same thing as good followership. In the sense of what I said earlier about you don't need a title, you don't need to be the elected official, you don't need to be the person that everybody attaches the label of leader to. You need to be someone who's willing to challenge, to care, and to support. There's a saying going around that you've probably seen in campaigns associated with bullying and other kinds of unfairness. If you see something, say something. Well, I'd like you to expand the notion that that slogan incorporates and think about ways, another version of that slogan. If you see something that needs getting better, if you need something that calls out for positive change, say something as a way of starting, but then do something about it. So that's why I started off with my story about judicial education. That affected me personally. I felt very much hung out to dry as a young professional, and I didn't want other new judges and even older judges to have that experience. I thought that the courts as institutions would be better, fairer places if we did something more to support judges in their professional activities and to support the staff people who work for the courts in their professional activities. And that's what drove me to work on judicial education and judicial branch education. Likewise, when I became a judge, I started to care a great deal about all of the issues associated with the courts, the delay that hurts people's lives, the lack of education that a lot of judges have about the cases that they are dealing with. And so I saw education as a way to make inroads in the direction of positive change. So just, you know, think about what's happened to you in the last week, what you've experienced, what you've seen, what you've read about, what's awakened you in the middle of the night, and think about ways in which you, without any title, without any election, might do something about it. Might, at the very least, offer, suicide prevention was on that list. I'm sure you're aware that just having people pay attention to other people and notice the signs of depression and serious mental illness, it can be the first step in the prevention of suicide. So there are better, if you've noticed better ways to do something, to make positive change in groups or organizations, if you see something, say something, and then do something. Let me close with another quotation that I love from Eleanor Roosevelt, which means a great deal to me, and I hope it'll carry over into your group discussions. A mature person, something we all aspire to become, right? A mature person is one who does not think only in absolutes, who is able to be objective even when deeply stirred emotionally, who has learned that there is both good and bad in all people and in all things, and who walks humbly and deals charitably with the circumstances of life, knowing that in this world no one is all-knowing, and therefore all of us, and I love this line, all of us need both love and charity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Good advice for all of us. So it's time to move to the workshops now. And you see my face up there. I need to get a different picture. I'm tired of that one. So if you are, which many of you are, if you are going to stay at the workshop, the one that's over on the far end, you don't have to wait to lead as young women. That group will stay in here, and your panel will actually be right up here. So you can move after other people leave, you can move down. And so again, if you're in that session, your workshops stay here. If you are in the mindfulness with Kathy Debenham, I don't know if Kathy's in here, she's probably in the room. Hey, there she is. So you can get to hers. Hers is in center stage, which is actually down here on this floor, but you can get to that from going up the stairs and follow the, is it red, Deirdre? The red over to the right and down the stairs, or you can come down and through that door and get to center stage over there. And if you are with me on understanding women's negative interactions with each other, you'll go up the stairs and over yellow arrows over that way to 206. And I think that's it. Let's switch and then get going.
good. I just was gonna come. I know, like this cord has me walk. Yes, break it out. Okay, well just let us. Okay. Michelle. Yes, Shelly and Maggie. Okay, Michelle and Kylie. Yes. Maggie, you're so awesome to do this. I was just telling your mom that if my sister got asked to do this last minute, she would be like, absolutely not. So this is so cool. It'll be really good to have you. Yeah, you're good. You'll do great. When we don't know the answers, we'll just look at you and be like, wing it. Maggie, well, she knows. She said, you took notes? I mean, it takes a minute to remember that part of my brain when they say middle school. When you were in high school, I was like, you were young. You were too young to forget about high school. Is that my water or my water? I think this was fine because I just took a sip out of it. So hopefully we should turn 40. Yeah. So we're the same. Yeah, we're the same age. Hey, you made it. I kind of wrote some answers. So it'll change your whole text, and I think they're waving it in the back. Yay! Okay, let's try that. It looks like that's as big as it goes. So, oh, that doesn't look like that. And that's just issue the text. Yeah, and shoot, the text bigger. Oh, I want to get a picture of this group. Okay, I'm going to go grab my phone. So we're going in top 10. So this is top 5. So they actually create about 5 minutes. A little less, between 5 and 10. Awesome. The less time you want is good. Yeah, less time is better. No, it'll be good. It always goes by fast. Yes. It's kind of serious on there because it's yeah, that is my current title. Got it. Yeah, my cousin's supposed to be coming, but I think he's going to walk in late. They don't know what I'm doing. They're taking a picture. Where's your family? Oh, yeah. The daughter with the bun, right?
With your ponytail.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
All right. Good evening, ladies. I'm really excited to welcome all of you here. We have a few men here too, and we're excited that you're here as well. My name is Janice Bullock. I'm a partner with a CPA firm here in Orem called Squire. But more importantly, tonight I'm an ambassador for the Utah Women in Leadership Project. I'm really blessed to be able to work with Susan Madsen that you briefly heard from earlier. And I love what I'm able to do, and I'm really excited about this event tonight and really excited to welcome all of you. So I'm going to introduce your moderator, Heather Groom, and then she'll introduce you to the rest of the panelists. Heather Groom is a graduate of BYU and the SUU MPA program. She has spent most of her life in public service. She served as deputy campaign manager for Governor Gary Herbert in the 2012 and 2016 campaign cycles. She also served as president of the Utah Federation of Republican Women and served on the National Board of Directors. In addition, she was a board member for the Utah State Board of Education and has been an advocate for children and education policy for nearly 20 years. Over 15 years ago, Heather started a small market research company and has been involved in high-profile research projects with several Fortune 500 companies. Last year, she started a real estate investment company with her husband, Brent. In addition to her business experience and public service, Heather is a seasoned traveler. She's visited 6 out of 7 continents and plans to visit her final continent, Antarctica, in the next 3 years. This past summer, she and her husband packed up their 3 children and visited 10 countries on 3 continents, walking over 250 miles as a family in a 6-week period. Heather is a strong supporter of all women and an ambassador, along with me, in the Utah Women in Leadership Project.
Well, thank you, Janice. Thank you so much. And thanks, everyone, for being here tonight. This is going to be a lot of fun. So I'm just thrilled to be with you. Before I introduce these amazing women, Susan told me I could maybe take a second and tell you a little story or two. And as Justice Durham was talking, I thought of some interesting experiences I had maybe when I was your age, for some of you young women out there, and maybe some formative experiences, because usually we know that when you have a believer, someone who believes in you, you will believe in yourself. And so I hope you seek out those people that believe in you. But I remember I had a junior high counselor when I was in 8th grade, and I was going through one of those kind of interesting spells. I decided to kind of cut my hair short, and in the 80s we had clothes that were 3 times too big for us. Remember that? And so anyway, I remember, it wasn't probably the best phase of my life, but I remember one day I was in her office and she looked at me and she said, "Heather, you're a leader." And I was like, "Are you talking to me? Who are you talking to?" And I had no idea. And she said, "We're going to have PBS here tomorrow at our school, and I want you to help give the tour." And I was totally shocked. I thought, "Are you kidding me?" And so it was a moment in my life where I went, wow, I have an opportunity to be a leader. And since then, I've had many opportunities to take leadership positions, and just like tonight we've heard, leadership isn't always in a title, but it's being a leader and becoming a leader, and all of your leaders. And I hope you recognize that, right now, that you have the opportunity in your spheres to become leaders. So anyway, with that, I'm going to introduce our amazing panel to you today. So over to my left, right here, we have Kylie Tanner, and she is the Assistant Clubs Coordinator here at UVU. And she graduated with a bachelor's degree in communication just this last year. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting in her bio is she was the president of the Ping Pong Club. So I really want to hear about that, actually. But Ping Pong Club, that's awesome. So she also is a UVU Foundation ambassador. So she has a lot to share with us tonight. And then next to her, we have Michelle Loveday. And she's an educator, so she's taught school. She's also been a vice principal and a principal, and right now she works for Granite School District, and she's working in the Department of Educational Equity, which I think is fantastic. And she'll probably talk and tell us a little bit about that as well. When she's not in the schools, she is a member of her church's praise team. And I thought that was a really cool thing. So she's on her praise team, which helps youth and helping them where needed. And then also, she's a member of Delta Sigma Theta, and she serves in the community. She's the president of the local chapter, and she's a mother of 5 children, and she has chickens. I thought that was really interesting, too. So I'm learning all sorts of really interesting things about all these women on the panel. So I'm just like, 5 kids, but the chickens were like, wow, that's really cool. So anyway, and then next to her, we have Shelly Nielsen. And she's excited to be here. She's also, she spoke many times up and down the Wasatch Front and into Idaho. She's been a student, she was student body president at Logan High School, and she was also elected governor at Girls State. And it seems like she's an Aggie in even her email was Aggie. Yes, true Aggie. So I saw that, I thought that was great. And she has a small business that she runs, and she serves on the school community council. She also is involved in many things, and a mother of 5 children also. So wonderful to have you, Shelley.
But no chickens.
No chickens, though. But good ice cream if you've ever been up to, up north. So, and then next to her we have Maggie Scribner, and she's a freshman at BYU, studying public health. And she's the oldest of 6 kids, so she's had a lot of opportunities to work in leadership. Is that right? So Maggie was on the student council for 3 years in high school. She's played several sports, and she served on her community council. She also volunteered at Timpanogos Hospital. And then her mom told me she was also president of the Ginger Pride Club, which I thought was awesome, too. I was like, wow. So anyway, Maggie, we are happy to have you here, too. So we're going to just dive right in, and I hope all of you think of some questions. I'm hoping we'll have some extra time tonight, and we'd love to hear from you and have you ask some questions of everyone up here on the panel. So like I mentioned earlier, there's usually a formative experience sometime in everyone's life when someone will reach out to you and tell you that you're a leader, or someone has believed in you. And most women especially can remember that experience or that person that told them they were a leader. And so I thought we'd just go around real quick, and I'll start with Kylie, and just ask you to share maybe one of your formative experiences that helped you in wanting to lead.
All right, thank you. I'm super excited to be here tonight. It's so awesome to see so many familiar faces and new faces, and it's going to be a good evening. To answer your question, though, Heather, I think the first time I remember, I never really considered myself to be a leader when I was younger, because, we're kind of taught that leaders have these important titles and they have to be in Congress and things like that. But when I was probably 12, I was in a leadership position in my church, and I was involved that way, and one of my leaders had just talked to me about how I was a good example to the girls, and I thought, wow, I'm an example to someone? Like, I didn't think people were watching me. And she said, these younger girls are watching you, and I thought, wow, that must mean something. And I from that moment on, I realized that I had the potential to become a leader, and I wanted to kind of progress that forward. So I'll talk more about that later, but I'd love to hear from you guys.
So this was a harder question for me because I had to remember back then, and I was reminded of how awesome the 80s were at that point. And so one of those formative years was my 6th grade year. I was on safety patrol, kind of a crossing guard, 4th and 5th grade, but 6th grade was the year that you could put your name in for captain. And so for some reason, I didn't realize that there's also a lieutenant. I just had my mindset on captain. And I thought, oh, I could do this. And it wasn't anything that someone particularly said to me. It was just the description of what a captain of safety patrol is and what they do. And, being the youngest female, I was the only girl in my family. I had 2 older brothers. I thought, oh my gosh, I'd get to tell all the boys what to do, and they would have to listen to me. And so I went for, captain of safety patrol. Sadly, I didn't get it. I became lieutenant. I didn't even know what I was supposed to do with that position. So it was a good starting point for me to see, A, you don't get everything that you go for the first time, and B, it is okay to be the second in command, so to speak. In that position, you're just as important. So I think that was what shaped my leadership.
That's fun to see just in yourself being attracted to captain, or being attracted to being president of something, or being an officer. There's something inside all of us that wants to be a leader. Mine is a little, I'll do mine kind of more the end of high school. Like Heather mentioned, I was the student body president at Logan High, along with my other 2 sisters. So I'm the middle of 3 girls, and it was just something. Someone said, "Oh, why did you think you could run for student body president?" I thought, why couldn't I? I didn't ever think I couldn't be president because I was a girl. That was something that I just wanted to do, and I thought I could do it. But as I was leaving high school, I remember kind of towards the end of the year, and I was going to go up to Utah State, and someone said, "Oh, are you going to be student body president at Utah State?" And I said, "Oh, no, no way. That's huge. How could I ever do that?" And all of a sudden I got there and realized that's not big. That's just, you get involved in this committee and then you help on a campaign. And, 2 years later, I was student body president at Utah State. So it's a small thing, that it's something that seems big. Oh, I could never run for that, or I could never start a club, or I could never do something. But start small. Join the club. And then before you know it, you're running it, or before you know it, you've started a new one. So, I don't know if that. Oh, yes. We'll trade, yeah.
Okay, mine was a similar story, except for it was my 8th grade year, less exciting than college. And I didn't run for student body president. I ran for secretary of labor, which was a thing in my junior high student council. That was the first time. I don't know why I even decided to run for student council as an 8th grader, but I don't know, I was interested in maybe making a few more friends, maybe being a little more popular, which is not a good reason to do that. Don't do that. But I was not the smartest 8th grader around. But I remember just thinking I was going to go for a teacher-appointed position because my teachers loved me. They always had. That was my thing. I wasn't good with people my own age, but teachers loved me. But I decided, after looking at all the positions, to go for a student-elected position. I ended up running against this really popular kid, and somehow I ended up winning, and that was kind of, a big thing to me that that even though I didn't see myself as a popular kid, it had worked out in my favor. I was always kind to people, and it worked out in my favor, I guess.
Well, that's great. One of the common threads I think that we can hear is just they all showed up. And I remember once being at a political event, and I asked somebody, I said, "How did you end up getting here or whatever?" And they said, "You know what? I just showed up." And I've taken that advice for the last few years because I'm going to have a little confession here too. I actually never took a poli-sci class in college. And so even though I was one of the governor's campaign managers, so I actually showed up. I was involved in a community issue about 15 years ago. And next thing I knew, we had people show up at my doorstep, and we started connecting with other people. And next thing I knew, people said, "Hey, we need to get this effort going." And this TV camera was in my face saying, "Hey, are you guys, opposing this development?" And next thing I knew, we were kind of organizing our neighborhood. And then after that, we decided to run a mayoral campaign, and our guy won. And so we were totally shocked because we had never done that before. And then after that, I just kind of showed up to things. And then next thing I knew, I had people calling me saying, "Hey, will you help run my campaign?" And I was like, "Wait, what?" And I'm holding my little baby, and I'm like, this wasn't exactly what I planned, but I absolutely loved it. A fantastic experience. But what I tell people all the time is so many of these things happen just because you're willing to put yourself out there. And so just remember that. And that's the common thread is, just putting yourself out there, running for captain and being lieutenant captain, right, of safety patrol, and I'm sure she rocked that. And so just being willing to just even volunteer in some capacity, because so many times we look at things and I think we see it as too big. We see this thing as big, like you were saying, the president of a student organization. That's so big, but you just show up. So I hope all of you listen to that and do it, okay? So that is the key part. Well, thank you for what you've shared. So why should the young women in the audience today use their voices, and how can they lead right now? So that's one of the things I'd like to talk about. And Michelle, why don't we start with you, and then we'll just kind of go this way.
Okay, so how many of you are in middle school? Raise your hand. Look at that. That is amazing. And it's also a scary time in your life, right? There's so many things going on inside, outside of your body alone. And so you're trying to figure yourself out, let alone here we're talking to you about how important it is to lead. I want to touch on a subject that maybe you've heard in the news that you definitely can play a role. As middle school students, even high school students, speaking up for the wrong is something that can prevent anything from happening in the future. So if you're thinking about, oh, I could never be a leader, if you see someone that's out at the cafeteria and they're always getting their tray slammed down by someone, and you just watch it, and you're not doing anything about it, that's taking a back seat to what's happening. But you can be a leader and stick up and say something, whether not to that person, maybe because they're a little intimidating, but you can alert the principal and say, hey, you know what, every day when I'm at lunch, I just need you to follow me into the lunchroom so I can point something out to you, right? And I look at what's happened in the news with the gymnastics issue that happened. And you're here tonight, and I think it's incredibly important that as young women that you're not afraid to use your voice when something's going wrong. And if those young ladies were encouraged and empowered and not silenced by their voice, how many more young ladies could have been prevented of being hurt by, you know, someone that they think that they could trust? So I think you have to look at it, well, it may not change while you're in that seat, but I'm gonna speak up because I don't want that to happen to my little sister. I don't want that to happen to my cousin. And it could be in any shape or form. It doesn't have to be large like the gymnastics issue. It could be something small as, you know, someone's being paid to get their homework completed by somebody else. And that happens. And if you know it happens, speak up. And there's a risk that comes with it. But I think at the end of the line, once you take that risk and speak up, you're gonna see, you know, later on in life, you're gonna be glad you did. You don't want any regrets.
Wouldn't she be the coolest principal? Oh my gosh, I wish she'd been my principal. How fun. I'd be always want to go to the principal's office.
I just have to say, she does not look old enough to have 5 kids. I want to look this young.
Yes. Yes.
Look up a saying about our skin tone in black and not cracking.
Oh, well. And fun and amazing. Okay, so the question, why should we use our voice, right?
Yeah, why should the young women?
So I love what Michelle said. When you use your voice, you give other people permission to, and other people confidence. But I think in using your voice and leading, it builds character in yourself. Leading is scary, and you learn things about yourself sometimes you don't want to, like, shoot, I'm kind of bossy. Oh, I only like my way. Ask my husband. Sometimes I think my way's the best, and I don't love other suggestions. But I think that's things that you learn. I remember when I was in student body officer in high school, having a vision of a way that something should be decorated. We were decorating the lobby for Spirit Week, and I had in my head a way that it should be, and I learned through you know collaborating that there was a better way than I had. You know, my friend Georgina came and said, well, what if we hung it this way, or what if we did that way? And so I think that you learn things about yourself by being a leader, and it builds character in yourself. I think another thing is when you use your voice as a leader, it builds confidence in you, and you'll try to do something else. And then you'll be surrounded by people that are people that are serving and leading, are selfless and confident, and you're surrounding yourself by great people and probably some cute boys. So there's that, right?
I think that's good enough reason. Yes. Might as well stop. So when I think of using your voice, one way that I thought about this a little differently is that you don't have to be giving a speech to 1 million people. You don't have to be speaking out about something necessarily. You should, if it's bad. But I think that another way to use your voice is befriending people. It's reaching out and supporting people who maybe don't have the support systems that you have. And it's building others up. And I think especially throughout junior high and high school, that is so important. That's how I made some of my very best friends. And I don't know, it helped me learn so much as I turned outside of myself and as I was able to use my voice for good in that way.
I love that. Kylie.
I just have to add one thing to that. So I didn't even know Maggie was going to be speaking tonight, but she is friends with my little sister. And one thing that my sister Savannah has always said is there is not one person at Timpanogos High School who does not like Maggie Scribner. And I think that's so true. Like, I don't even know her super well, but it's pretty powerful when you have like someone like my sister who doesn't like really know Maggie super well. Like, they're not best friends, but Maggie's the type of person that will just walk down the hall and say hi to everyone. And I kind of have some regrets about, in high school, not like I was rude or anything, but just opportunities where I could have reached out and helped, and my voice was silent. And so, yeah, I love that. Thank you.
I love that because it's interesting, and something I've told my kids a few times is just, it's interesting because the kids that are usually the most popular, or even like I've gone to a high school reunion, and the ones you remember are the ones that really were just friends with everybody, that didn't really care about, they weren't into their own ego, but they just talked to everyone. And I still remember a few of those kids' names, and one was named Rob, and I remember he just kind of went through the high school and he knew everybody's name. I mean, he just made it a point to know their names, and he just memorized it. I think he probably took like the yearbook or something and just memorized it. But it meant a lot to everyone, and everybody considered him a friend. And so that's something that you can do right now, and being a leader, and you don't know what that means to someone else, because you don't know if they have very many friends or what their home situation is. But just even saying hi or recognizing someone, that's huge, and that's really being a leader. So great thoughts on that. Okay, so let's go to the next question. So why do you think it's important that young women prepare right now to be leaders in the future? I mean, what's the future going to be like, and what's the future going to be like for these young women right now, but what can they do? So let's start with you, Shelley, and then just kind of go around this way.
I think throughout your life, no matter how old you are, everyone's going to need your perspective, a woman's perspective in an organization. And so you start now, and you'll be influencing, on all levels, all the way to whether you have the opportunity to be a principal, a teacher, run clubs. I stay home with my kids, but I have a online business and do a lot with my kids' schools and things. And my voice matters. It's skills that I developed when I was your age are helping and blessing my community and my family and my kids.
I am still young. I'm still a child, and I feel kind of unqualified to answer this question, but I know that I really admire women like you who, when I see you in leadership positions and I see you being successful and doing great things, and then that reminds me that I can do those things as well.
Getting involved just really creates a solid foundation for your life. And I don't want the word leader to scare anyone here, because you guys are all leaders and everyone has something they're passionate about. And I want to share something that I thought was really awesome. I spoke at this training that was held at UVU called Elect Her. And it was just encouraging women to not necessarily run for office, but get involved in whatever it may be. And one thing that they said is, what is an issue you care about? What is an issue that you care about? 2, why do you care about it? What is your personal connection to the issue? 3, what solution do you suggest for that issue? And 4, how might you implement those solutions? And if you think about something you're passionate about, or, we can all find a problem in the world, I'm sure. There are plenty of them, but if we're passionate about something, take that passion and use it for good, and try to find something that you can get involved in. And I think that's going back to the question of why it's so important, is just because we are literally the future leaders of America. Not to sound all political and stuff, but seriously, it's so important, whether it's on a community level or you take it even bigger. And I think it starts with the little things, just doing the small, simple things. And like Heather said, 90% of success is showing up. There were so many times in high school where I just didn't want to go. I was on student council, and I kind of got burned out towards the end of the year, and I was just, oh, do I have to do this? But when you commit to something and you stick through, push through to the end, it really teaches you a lot about the power of your mind and the ability you have to do hard things. So get involved.
I definitely agree. I think the one thing about getting involved in leadership young is it helps you develop a thick skin and helps you to figure out who you are. So even if you are in love with animals and you want to work at the Humane Society, get involved there, take a leadership position there, find what interests you and work at that. I think as you're preparing yourself for later in life, you have to give yourself an opportunity to try different things out. And not be afraid to do that. I don't know how many of you walk around thinking, I don't want to get involved in anything. I just have no drive to do anything. You're interested in something. You're obviously interested in something, whether it's hair or shoes or dogs or something else that you're interested in for, you know, it could be chickens. You can come take care of mine. I was just going to say, or chickens. It's random. That happened when I was unsupervised by my husband. But really, that's another story. But really, it's important for you to start getting how you operate down. Because once you figure out what kind of leader you are, you can be that leader. And it's emphasized over and over again that it's not just a title. I know a lot of times, and I had to tell many people that, yeah, my title is principal, but that was just so that somebody could take the fall when something didn't go right, really. Because at the end of the day, I looked towards the teachers that were in my school that could get things done. And most importantly, I looked towards my students. Many of you might have heard of Franklin Covey and the Leader in Me program. But thanks to a parent saying, hey, we should put that into our school, and my community council sending me to a workshop about it, I was led to say, okay, this is something that my students need. And it was to a point where by the end of me being at my school after 5.5 years, the assemblies weren't run by me. My students did it. My student council did it. If kindergarten had an assembly, I went to my student council and said, hey, kindergarten needs an assembly. I want to see what you're going to do. We talked about it. I helped them think it through. But leadership is not about always being out in the forefront. There's many times where you're a leader and you're in the back shadow, and you have to be okay with not having your name stamped on everything. And I think if you take a moment and just start small, whether it be in your neighborhood or in your school, you get used to what it feels like to be a leader. Because it's lonely and it's humbling, but you definitely can do it, and you can learn what happens in that life.
I love that. And I think one of the things that's so important, and it just kind of clicked in my brain, is that leaders and titles are two different things. And I really hope that we all realize that, because titles, people can have titles, and I've met a lot of people with some big titles, but it's interesting how many are real leaders. And I'm going to just tell you just a little something about the governor that's really interesting, but he's one of the most humble people I've probably ever worked with. And he's not afraid to meet with anybody who's on the opposing side of any issue with him. And I have literally seen people, I never knew what spitting mad was until I went to some town halls. And I saw people just purple in the face and spitting, and he was just calm and listening to them. And it was an attribute that I thought, you know what, I need that. I need to not get too emotional. I need to not get upset, and a lot of times that's what hurts our argument, is when we get angry. Because even though we get passionate about something, we can be passionate, but we also need to be respectful of other opinions, even the ones that are different than our opinions. And so I think that's just something we need to remember. And like I said, it's interesting to work with people with different titles, because another little thing about the governor is we always have this joke, because he is the last one to leave any event, okay? Like, it doesn't matter what time it is, and he will be pushing a broom and putting away the chairs. Like, I actually have some photos that I've kind of taken like this, you know. And but you know, he'll be stacking the chairs, and the most successful projects I've also worked on with people is when, and this is, I heard a quote, and I'm just going to paraphrase it, but it's when no one cares who gets the credit, then it will be a success. And I think that that's really important to remember. When no one cares who gets the credit, then it will be a success. Because if everyone's in it as a team and wanting something better, that's how we know that it will be a success. I'm going to do one last question, and then I want to turn some time over to you. So be thinking of your questions. But I thought about one that, I thought about the fear of failure, because there are studies out there that women, a lot of times, we don't put ourselves out there, and I can be the first one to say I am totally guilty of this. Usually I can think of every reason not to apply for something, or I can say I'm not totally qualified because I'm missing this little element. And so we have a tendency to do that. We're men, and they'll look at something and they'll say, I am 50% qualified, I am good to go, Like they'll look at their resume, hey, this is the job, the job criteria, and they'll say, okay, hey, I meet 50%. Women, we go, ooh, I'm only at 90%, I got that 10% that, maybe I'm not totally qualified. And so I think we scare ourselves away from applying ourselves a lot of times. But that fear of failure, and I'm not even sure exactly how I want to word this question, but how has that affected your life? And what would you, maybe what advice would you give your younger self in order to get over that fear of failure? So let's start with you, Maggie, your younger self, even though she's a senior this year.
Oh man, I think one of the best lessons that I learned about dealing with the fear of failure came one time when I failed. I ran for vice president of my high school. I ran for student body vice president. It's a pretty big high school. It was a big deal. Running for student council at my high school was huge, and I gave a speech, and we had to do a dumb little skit and a dance in front of the whole school, embarrassing, definitely. And when I lost, I was so devastated. I thought that something was wrong with me. I thought that it tanked my self-worth because this was people voted for the people that they liked, so maybe people didn't like me, and I was so distraught. But it took me a while to realize that that's what helped me grow, and now I'm less scared to go for things because I understand that life goes on. And I did end up on the student council just as a generic cabinet member, and that's when also I learned that you don't need a title. I did so much more that year than I ever probably could have. I didn't have to take the fall for some of the problems that our student council had because I wasn't in the presidency. But yeah, that was definitely the biggest thing that I learned, is that failure is a necessary part of growth. And you can't let it stop you from going for things. You have to go for things, and then you have to move forward regardless of the result.
I love that. Okay, Kylie, I'm going to turn that to you.
I think we could just end with Maggie right there. That was awesome. I totally agree. I mean, I was talking to Susan Madsen right just before this. She's in a different session now, but she was talking about some research she's done and just how most women feel, they don't try for things because they're scared that they won't, get them. And I thought, why is that happening with women? Why aren't we as confident as men? And I just think that it's so important just to be confident, but not necessarily, in a rude way, but just confidence can go a long way. And just the humility of losing is huge as well. And I was listening to a podcast a few days ago that talked about, it said the unconscious mindset, there's this unconscious mindset that we call scarcity, and that there's not enough. And so sometimes we wake up and we say, oh, I didn't get enough sleep. I know my husband's right here, and I say that to him every day. I didn't get enough sleep this morning, or last night, I mean. And then, we say, there's not enough time in the day. There's not enough this. And then we start to think we're not enough. And I think when we have that mindset, we do let fear get into the way because we're timid to try things. And so I think one way we can kind of combat that is to just focus on what we do have. Hey, you know what? I got 5 hours of sleep last night. That was great. At least I didn't get 4. Or, I'm so glad that I focus on the things you accomplish in the day and not saying, oh, I wish I had got this and this and this done. We need to give ourselves more credit because we're awesome. And so I think that's one thing that will go a long way.
This is why I always just ask what the younger generation thinks, because they said everything that needs to be said. If I could go back and tell my younger self one thing about leadership is, one, don't be afraid of the word no, which I think goes along with failure. There's a book that I love to read to my little daughters that's called Amazing Grace. And in the book, Amazing Grace loves to tell stories. She reads the stories and then she acts them out. So if she reads about pirates one day, she's a pirate the next day, and she's wearing the items, and she's on the ship, and she's using her dog as the parrot. And she just has this wild imaginations that's amazing, which goes with her name, Grace. And she, heard in her elementary class that they were gonna have Peter Pan as the play. And her friends were like, you can't be Peter Pan, you're a boy. And so she goes home kind of feeling defeated, and her mom's like, what do they know? Who says? That's not okay. And she was able to get encouragement again. And then they went back, and another friend said, oh my goodness, you can't be Peter Pan, you're black. And she went back and was defeated, and her grandmother took her to see Swan Lake and see a beautiful prima ballerina that was defeating the odds as the first black female doing that. And so at the end of the story, Amazing Grace didn't say no and didn't take what her friends were saying to her. She auditioned for the part, and guess what? She got it. She became Peter Pan. So who's to say that you can't, right? So in failure in that sense is, there are times where you might not get the part. You might not get the position that you want on student council, but don't be afraid of the word no. And you have to, in order to get to where you're going, failure is part of that. I didn't get to where I am because I got every job I applied for. I applied in Alpine School District when I first moved here. They said no. I applied in Jordan School District to become a principal. They said no. I'm where I need to be because I'm supposed to be there. Failure sometimes is the doors closing so that other amazing double doors can swing your way. And so you have to take that failure as an opportunity of, oh, dang, something is about to be lit. I'm gonna just tear it up. It's gonna be amazing. I just have to keep trying and don't say no to what the possibility of that is.
These are awesome. These are awesome comments. So several things when you talk about, failure and not getting something and running for something or applying. The most impressive thing that you can do if you run for something and don't get it, let's not even call that a failure because you ran. Yeah. First of all, there's, 1,000 kids in your school or 2,000 kids in your school and 20 of you ran. I mean, you're 20 of 2,000 that even had the courage to do it. So that's a win. That's a success right there. If they choose someone and not you, it doesn't mean they didn't want you. It maybe just means they wanted that other person. And I remember when I was helping a friend that I was supporting someone that was running for student body president at Utah State. And their opponent challenged me a little bit. And I said, oh, it's not that I don't want you. I just want this, this is the person who I've been on committees with or I've supported. And so it wasn't that I don't want you. So think about that too. If you don't get something, it's not that they didn't want you. Maybe they wanted that other person for different reasons, and that's fine. But the most impressive thing you can do if you don't get what you ran for is still be involved. Still be involved. You get these kids that want to run for student council in junior high or high school, and they say, I love this school, I want to make a change, I want to do this and that, and then they don't get elected, and they don't do anything. Well, did they love the school then? Did they really want to help? Or did they want the title and the sweater and the, or that? I had a number of friends that maybe didn't get the position they ran for, and they still showed up, and they participated, and they were awesome. And they had just as many experiences, and they got to be involved, and so that's, then the next time when you go to do something, people will remember, oh, they still participated, and they really did mean what they said because they participated regardless. And so even if you don't get the certain position you want, don't be too proud to still get involved. And when we talk about ways you can get involved and how you can do it, everyone says, oh, I don't know how to get involved. How did you even do that? 4 simple words. You find the leader, someone in charge, and say, how can I help? And I promise you'll be leading. You say, how can I help? So ask your coach, ask your counselor, ask the student body president, you know, whoever, hey, how can I help? And they'll find a position for you.
That's fantastic. So I hope that everyone's been thinking of some great questions because, you know, I think all of these comments have been fantastic, and especially on failure and never giving up. I mean, just remember, never give up, show up, and it's amazing where you'll go. So we've got Robin over here with a microphone. So, oh, 2 microphones, good. So raise your hand if you have a question that you'd like to ask the panel. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, right here. Maybe shout it. Okay.
So if we're not ready to be a leader or run for office or something like that, what are some small steps we can do to get started?
That's fantastic. Yes, so we'll just repeat it. So she said, what if we're not ready to run for an office or some kind of like a student council position, right? Or, but what else can we do? What are some small steps? And I think that is key because it starts small, okay, let me tell you. So let's start with Kylie.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. What are your interests? I don't want to put you on the spot, but like, what are some of your hobbies, things you like to do? Okay, awesome. You play lacrosse and you like to travel. I think you're already a leader and probably don't realize it. I bet if you were to go to your lacrosse team and if your coach were to talk to the other girls when you weren't there, I bet you multiple girls would say, you know, what's your name? Helen? Awesome. That Helen has influenced me in some way. And so I think that's the biggest step is just continue what you're doing and pursue what you love to do and meet people and have fun. It doesn't have to be this huge thing, but just take every opportunity you can to get involved. And what I found with my life is just everything I've done has led to something bigger and better. I did student council in high school, and I thought I was kind of done with that. You know, I was like, I don't know if this is really for me. And I went to UVU my freshman year because my dream was to go to BYU. My parents went there, that's where they met each other, and I didn't get accepted. And I was like crushed because I didn't even really have a backup plan. I just kind of thought that's where I was going. And I was just like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? And so I decided to go to UVU for a year, and then I wanted to transfer to BYU. But I had such an amazing experience here that I decided to stay. And the reason I stayed is because I had this girl in my class who knew everybody. Like, she just seemed like she was so friendly, and I said, how do you know so many people? And she told me that it's because she took advantage of the opportunities here on campus. And so that led me to multiple opportunities in the mentor program, and then I eventually ran for student body officer here on campus and was in the student body presidency, and that led to the chief of staff of the Utah Student Association and all these things. And I never thought that, you know, that wasn't my end goal, but because I just took opportunities, they kind of just came to me, so to speak.
I think in that sense, if you're not ready, it is intimidating sometimes. And I think Shelley said it best, is the big question. If you see something that you're interested in, there might be a captain of your lacrosse team, but you go up to her and say, hey, how can I help? And that's really key, is those 3 words lead to you figuring out what you're interested in, you seeing if you want to be in that leadership position. A lot of times people are like, oh, you should do this, you should do that. Well, I have no interest, but I will be glad to help you get to wherever you need to go in that. And that is part of, being that leader, is helping.
And even think about small things. My daughter that's in 5th grade was really kind of moved and devastated by Hurricane Harvey. How many of you guys saw that and thought, I want to do something. So her and her friend did a bake sale, and they made $300. And so they spent all day making these yummy homemade Oreos, and I may have bought all the stuff, and it probably cost me $300, but maybe $100. But yeah, but I didn't buy all the stuff at the bake sale. I bought all the stuff to make it. I bought all the ingredients, we should say. I bought all the ingredients, and then they sold to the neighborhood and made these posters, and had me take them to the dollar store and buy this trifold. And their big thing was, it was the weekend of the BYU-Utah football game. So it said, coming together, rivals coming together. So my daughter wore BYU because that's where her dad went. I'm an Aggie. And her friend wore Utah. And so it was this BYU Utah coming together to raise money. So they're in 5th grade. And that was something she saw. There was 2 of them. So she wasn't in charge of a whole class of people, but that was leading, something. If you think, you want to do Sub for Santa, or you maybe know someone that needs a little bit of help, organize a little dinner group and have a spaghetti dinner at your house that's going to cost you $30, and maybe talk your mom into buying the stuff, and then invite your friends over and say $10 a plate, let's raise some money. So it can be little things. It doesn't have to be for the whole school. So find something that moves you and just do it little, and little forever. It doesn't even, you never have to have the big title and anything.
Was that Kate? Yes. I remember when her daughter was so little. Oh, and 5th grade is still pretty impressive. That's awesome. I think, I don't know, I agree with everything that you guys have all said. I think one more thing that you can kind of do to kind of prepare yourself for leadership is just trying new things. I remember when I started volunteering at the hospital, my first day was so scary. Like, people were not telling me what to do, and I was like, someone give me a job. Like, I ended up stuffing, like, I don't know, I made little ice packs for like 30 minutes, and then I went home because there's nothing else to do. But what my mom told me after that, she was like, hey, this is preparing you. Like, every new thing that you try gives you more confidence for when the next scary thing comes up. So even if it's just little, even if it's just talking to someone in one of your classes, or going to an event without friends with you, that can be scary at times. Yeah, just little things to push you out of your comfort zone can really build up into more confidence.
I think that's exactly right. And just to reiterate, remember, it's not about title. It's not about title. We need to say that in our minds a lot of times, but it's really not about title. It's about just being a part of something and just seeing it and recognizing it and doing it, and starting with even becoming friends with people, smiling at everyone in the hallway, and being confident about yourself as well. Right now, like we mentioned before, there's people in your schools that are struggling, and maybe you're struggling too. But just remember, it's kind of one of those fake it till you make it, right? So even if you're struggling, you got to kind of, take a deep breath and maybe, you go to an activity by yourself, but you're going to make new friends. And by putting yourself out there, you're going to have new experiences. And even when you ran for office and you didn't win, and that's happened to me before too, but you have to look at all the things you gained in the process. And so that's what really failure is about as well, is that you can kind of make a list and say, here's all I've learned and friends I've made. And so you can start really seeing how it blesses your life. Like, every failure has blessed my life in a really weird way. But you've got to also own it. And instead of kind of hiding, like sometimes we do just utterly fail at something, just be like, hey, you know what? That's okay. And I failed at that, and here's how I'm going to improve. So just embrace that as well. It doesn't mean you're ever a bad person. So just remember that. So let's go to the next question. Yep, up high.
My question is, what does it mean to be a leader? Like, do you have to boss people around, or?
Oh yeah, totally. No, I'm just kidding.
Let's just have one person answer it, and then we'll go to another question. Let's see. So does it mean to boss other people around? Let's see. Yeah. Michelle.
No, you don't. In fact, that's the worst way to be a leader.
Bad boss.
Bad. But, you see the leaders, right? But what it means to be a leader is being able to take the risks. It's being able to ask people to help and to put pieces in place. It's basically just setting up the checkerboard and making sure that it runs smoothly. Being a leader is more of just encompassing the fact that you can get it done and people are relying on you. And that's it. But you're delegating and you're working together. It's not the title.
And I think courage to try, really. It's like finding that courage in you And like we were saying, just small steps. Start with smiling or trying something new, because trying something new is scary. I mean, you know, it happens to me all the time. My husband will get on the computer, my kids, and they're like, oh, learn this. I'm like, no, I don't want to, I'm afraid I'll mess it up, you know. So you've got to just try, keep trying and trying, and you will be a leader. In fact, you are a leader right now. So Robin, up high.
Was there anything or anyone that inspired you to become a leader?
So was there anyone who inspired you to become a leader? Is that right? Is there like one person? Okay, yeah, let's do Kylie.
So I'm going to put my mom on the spot, who's right there. But I think she really inspired me to be a leader, because she didn't ever push me to do something I didn't want to do, but she always encouraged me. And in fact, just at my wedding dinner last summer, I learned that, so I'll back up for a second. In 9th grade, I decided one day that I was going to try out for the high school tennis team. And I'd never played tennis in my life, but I just thought, hey, I'll try out. Why not? Like, I'll start taking lessons, and this is something I'm going to be, you know, excited about, and what the heck. So I started taking lessons, and I tried out, and luckily, I don't know how, but I ended up making it. I was not a star by any means, but to me, it made sense. But just last year at my wedding dinner, my mom was kind of sharing some experiences about me, and she said, I could not believe that when the day Kylie told me she was going to try out for the tennis team, I almost just, like, my jaw dropped, and I thought, I guess I should support her in this, but, like, I don't know, like, being her mom, should I tell her that that's probably not a good idea? Like, what should I do? And so my mom really inspired me that way, because I didn't really realize it at the time, but she just really, you know, always supported me, and that's a good quality to have in a leader.
And I think even look at teachers. I know that I had some teachers, I'm sure we all did, that we had teachers that inspired us, and other people, maybe neighbors. But I know there's someone who believes in you other than yourself. And so you look for those people that are strong influences. And on those days that you have a down day, you say, help me to know, like, give me some feedback. And they're going to give you some good building up feedback, because you can learn a lot about yourself. Sometimes we doubt ourselves so much, and we don't even know what our positive strengths are. So we really need to, like, find those out. So great question. Okay, and, oh wait, sorry, we're gonna do this one up over here.
Okay, so I'm already a leader at my school, and I just wanna know what you guys think. How do we encourage other students and other young women in our school and encourage them to become leaders as well?
Okay, good question. Let's see, let's have Maggie. Yeah, so we'll repeat the question. So she said she's already in a leadership position in her school, and so she's wanting to know how to involve more girls, right, more young women, in different leadership opportunities.
One thing that we did when I was on student council is we had this giant spirit bowl, this giant event that we always needed help with. Sometimes we didn't get the help that we needed, and that was a disaster. But one thing that we really did was we looked outside of ourselves. We looked at people who had skills and talents, and we invited them. We said, hey, you're really good at this. Can you come help us? Like, we would love your support. And we also did our best to support other people in their events. I don't know, I think a big part of leadership is recognizing the skills and talents that other people have and then supporting them in that, and helping them recognize how they can use that in different ways. Does that answer your question?
I know, inviting them to participate. Sometimes people are just waiting for an invitation because they don't know that you want them to participate. And so sometimes it's just, even if it's something small like, hey, can you bring some paper plates? I've literally done that for political events before. So, I've most of my friends, they're like, oh, I don't want to be involved in politics. And I'm like, well, here, I need you to bring some paper plates. Or, hey, can you bring some cookies? Or, hey, I know you're really good at this. And so, I had one friend who now is doing this really interesting project at the state level. And it started with me being on her living room couch. This is a true story. I sat on her living room couch and I was like, Mandy, hey, I just need your help. Just can you come down to this office just for a few minutes and give me some feedback on something? And so I started getting her feedback, and then I had her show up for a meeting. She's like, I've never done this my whole life. And right now, she's actually one of the people behind it's called Better Days, and it's going to be celebrating the 19th Amendment, the suffrage movement in Utah in 2020. So anyway, so it was one of those success stories, and so it's great. But really, it's just starting small, right? And just inviting people to become involved and valuing their contribution. So, Robin.
What if you don't want to be a leader? Why should we be a leader?
Ooh, okay, that's a good question. Okay.
This is one that I have had students say to me all the time. And I say, well, you're a leader for even asking that, because people are thinking it. And so you really, in any capacity, people are watching you. And so you don't, again, have to have the title, but you are here for a purpose, right? We're not just on earth to take up space. And I was raised and told that, you know, your purpose in life is to serve and to do and to be kind to others. And like I've told all my students, you're a leader in some capacity. You just haven't found what that is yet. And that's okay. But I think you have to stop thinking that you're not a leader, because at home, you're a leader in some way, getting the family in the car in the morning so your mom doesn't have to lose her ever-loving mind, because that doesn't ever happen in my house. But you can be a leader in those small steps. So you may not want the title, but it's gonna come. Surprise, you'll have an opportunity. And it might be short-lived, but you're gonna have the opportunity.
And people are watching. Just remember, people are watching you all the time right now. And you have the opportunity to influence and change somebody's life for the better, always. So, Shelley?
I was going to say, I think maybe you don't want to be a leader. I know.
Shelley's kind of shrunk. Her chair had some difficulties.
Chair
but I
is
was
not-
like, next thing I know,
I'm
Shelley's
gonna
going to be on the
start
floor.
taking the stage.
So-
I'm pacing. I've got some moves.
ADD,
I'm going to pull it out. I know. All of a sudden, I was like, oh, this chair. Okay. Am I back? We'll lower with you.
But we're not going to point that out or anything.
Am I back
on here.
out? Here we go. I was down a little. Okay, I'm back. I think when you ask about how do I become a leader what if I don't want to, I think it's because we're maybe thinking of a leader as someone that's real outgoing, they're wanting to be on stage, they want a microphone, they want to be the star. We need every single type of leader. And I would do a leadership workshop for different youth groups and we talk about a baseball team, and you need a catcher and a pitcher and the outfield and the first base, second base, third base. The person in the outfield couldn't come in and be a pitcher and strike people out. The person that's at first base couldn't, do as well as a catcher. So you have to figure out what your strength is as a person. You don't have to say leader if that word sounds scary. Think of your strength as a person and decide, what position do I want to be? I don't want to be the one that's on stage with the microphone, but I want to be the one that's inviting other people, or that's coming up with a plan. I'm really good with detail and organization. So you've got to figure out what kind of person, or what do you have to contribute, and don't think of a leader as this title that we're talking about, or someone that's going to get big groups. Do you like to bake? Do you like to help out or babysit or, color, draw? And think of what you can contribute. I think that's what someone that's a leader is, someone that contributes something.
I love that. Any other last thoughts? Okay, actually, let's do one last question. Oh, and I'm so sad, but maybe you guys can all find us after. So we're going to go and have treats in a second. So I'm going to ask one last question, and then we'll just give some final thoughts, and then we'll go have some treats.
Hi, okay, so I'm 16 years old, so sadly I'm still stuck in high school.
Please stay there.
I personally have a lot of individual leadership goals for me. I have a blog and I do a lot of volunteer work and actual work in the special education, and I want to get a scholarship and everything, and I'm ready. I'm sorry, I hate high school, but when kids and people in my community kind of hear about what I'm doing, they just kind of look at me and you're only 16. or you've only been doing this for a few years, what do you know? Like, you can't do all of this at this young. Do you guys like have anything like, how do I react to that?
I love that question. I'm going to start with this real quick, and then you know, it's interesting because working in politics, you see some good and bad, and there's sometimes some interesting personalities, and it's not like I haven't heard negative comments before as well. And I think all of us have, and we've all been somebody's maybe tried to put us back in our box, right? And one of the piece of advice that I would give you is I call it my Wonder Woman shield. Okay? And I just kind of like think of like when somebody's saying something negative to me, usually it's because they have an insecurity. And you have to remember, it's usually when they're saying something mean, it's because they feel bad about themselves. And I hope you all remember that right now, because usually it's not about you, it's about them. And so if somebody's telling you that, or they're like, oh, you're ambitious, or they're kind of like maybe a cutting comment, I kind of just make this invisible force field around myself. Like I just envision kind of this like invisible dome, or like maybe my Wonder Woman, like, you know, those, the bracelets, you know, but I just kind of have to almost laugh it off. I know that sounds weird, but I have to almost just say, I recognize that, I'm seeing it through my different eyes, and I recognize that you have a problem, something with you, and it's not with me, and I don't absorb it. I make sure and deflect it. Like just kind of literally think of like your deflection shield right there. But it's not about you. It's some kind of comment. And I've been told that, and you know what? I probably didn't learn that lesson. So you're a bright girl, because I don't think I learned that lesson until even I was probably like in my late 30s. So I mean, I let other people's negative comments affect me. And now I just don't. Like and you know what? It's not that you have to be mean back. You just say, yep. Yeah, you just stay positive. You stay who you are, and like I said, Wonder Woman up. So anyone else?
Yeah, I would think to those, you're not only just 16. And I think the initial response you could say without being disrespectful, I'm assuming it's usually an adult. And so I think you should always still have that deference and the respect. And you can just say, oh, I'm just building my resume. And then depending on where that conversation goes, it could be, you know, well, I'm just inspired by people like Malala or someone like Kid President, and just start naming names that they know, and you know they know who they are, and remind them that those children and those young kids that are just 16 are changing the way we see the world. And I think I look to my children as to what they think. And it's a beautiful thing that even though you can't vote just yet, you're forming those opinions. And I really want you at just 16 to develop your resume, because I'm gonna need you to, you know, step up and take my position later. And don't be intimidated by those comments. A lot of the times, you know, it's their insecurities that are reaching out, but it's also them not seeing the potential. And maybe they've never encountered the potential like I have firsthand in students. And you could be that first, right? You could be that seed that they plant and then just say, oh my goodness, she proved me wrong. But I think the first response could just be like, oh yeah, I'm just developing my resume, you know, and mind your business.
Or okay. Just prove them wrong. Yeah, just prove them wrong.
Yep.
Prove them wrong. Don't say anything. Just prove them wrong and
just
keep
smile.
doing it.
Yep. Yeah. Deflect, like I said. Okay, so anyway, well, thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. This was a great discussion, and it reminded me, just know this also, we're still learning things. Like, even though some of us up here are a little adultish, right? We're still learning things, and there's so many things that I need to learn better, and you're inspiring me, and your comments, and be that influence for good for others. So thank you.
Thank you. We want to thank Heather and all of the members of our panel. So we have a couple gifts here for you.
That's so nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so you heard Heather allude to you're going to have treats. This is called the Speaker and Dialogue series. So you've had the speaker, and we've had some dialogue. But the other part of all of these events is we like to go to refreshments and then be able to discuss what we've talked about tonight and talk about how we're going to do things with it and change. So, and I just lost Robin. There you are. It's that way, right? Okay, so you're gonna go up, and then you're gonna go left, and then people will make sure you get in the right direction, but there'll be a room with refreshments and a place for you to mingle and talk. So thank you so much for coming tonight.